Hello and welcome to The Life You're Made For. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Pinney. Often our world feels reactive, confusing, and chaotic. On this show, we're going to slow down together. Take a breath, listen, and learn. We'll be joined in conversations with influential thinkers who will help us make new connections, understand our unique potential, check the beliefs we hold, and learn how to overcome unexpected challenges. I know that each and every one of us holds our own inner clarity, confidence, and courage, what I call 3C living and leading. So let's go after it together. I'm cheering you on. Hello, everyone. It's so good to be back. This is my dear friend, Jennifer, and colleague, Jennifer Vermillion. She is, we've known each other for a couple of years now, Jennifer, haven't we?
Yeah, it feels it feels longer though.
Doesn't it? I know.
In a good way.
Yeah. Honestly, your husband connected us, and I remember him saying to me, my wife would love you. And I'm like, well, then I'm sure I would love your wife. I think we sound very similar. So, and we do everything from the arts to our background in education, to our commitment to our family life and the quality of life. And even just as you're starting to explore the whole new field of coaching. So before I jump in, I want to just welcome you and then ask you to just tell our listeners a little bit of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you gave a bit of an intro to me. I professionally speaking, my background is in education. So I work with the County Office of Education, and my role there is primarily working with other educators to help them create more positive classroom environments for both them and their students. And so that's the bulk of what I do there. But then I guess probably again, very similar to you, I wear a lot of different hats too, right?
Yes.
So I'm also a wife and a mom of 3. So we've got some birthdays coming up. So I'm going to have a 10, 6, and 3-year-old that we partially homeschool them. So a lot of my time is dedicated to that. And then I also have my own podcast and brand around creativity. It's called Made to Create. And so when I'm not in my spare time, and for those who are only listening, the big air quotes there. I also do a lot of writing, podcasting, blogging, art, drawing, painting, things like that. So that is, in a very quick nutshell, a bit of who I am.
Oh, I love it. I love it because it just reminds me, I think I've got a couple decades on you. I'm not sure. I'd like to think it's just one, but I think it might be more.
We'll say it's one.
Yes, but we don't feel the age gap, do we, Jen?
No.
But I think what it's fun is like, I look at you and it reminds me of myself in my younger years of trying to manage career and not willing to allow my personal life to be put on the back burner, but also really wanting to still keep a kind of a toe or at least a foot in my career world too. So, and I think more and more women are beginning to learn how to do that more creatively. We've been told you have to do one or the other, and that's kind of old messaging. And I think as we started saying, no, I get to have both. I guess I want to talk a little bit about that, but I guess before I do, I want to introduce to our listeners what we're doing today. I want to talk a little bit about the coaching experience and what it's like to be a part of a coaching experience. Many people have questions about it. There's so many styles of coaching out there and different styles of coaching. So in the context of all that, I think one of the things that I really appreciated about you was your commitment to balance all of these different interests and commitments in your life. And so I guess I want to jump in there and just say, tell us a little bit about that, and then give us an idea of why you wanted to move into coaching.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to the balance piece, I've kind of started trying to get away from the word balance. Only because I've written about this too. In my mind, it's almost like I feel like I'm holding this like bar tray that's full of glassware and plates and forks and knives and leftover food and things like that. And that's all fine and well, right? We can stand there and we can hold that as long as we can. And some of us do it rather successfully, right? Sometimes some of us have a capacity to hold a little bit more on that tray than others do. But at some point for everybody, there's going to come a point where someone puts one more thing on there and then it tips, right? And everything comes crashing down. And I think that's the struggle that I've had with that in the past. And so instead of balance, I like to think about it more as like, how are we, just kind of, and actually, I don't know that I have a word that replaces that necessarily, but more of this idea of like some things we are holding a little, a little bit more loosely in our
Mm-hmm.
hands. And then there are
Mm-hmm.
other things that we're holding on a little bit tighter to, and that can shift over
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not that we're holding everything with equal value or with equal strength.
Mm-hmm.
That we've talked about this before, that right now in this time in my life, I'm really prioritizing my time with my family and my children. And that's not to say that I'm not doing a great job with my work either. It's just right now that
Mm-hmm.
like I just was texting with my boss earlier actually, and I found out that my daughter's kindergarten promotion is going to be tomorrow, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not a big hoopla. There's not like a lot of pomp and circumstance that they do around that
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And so in my head, I was like, I've was off of work this whole last week, and because we were sick, and part of
Mm-hmm.
me is like, oh man, like I really should be spending like the
Mm-hmm.
whole day in the office. And then there's the other part of me that's like, you know what? Right now, though, I'm holding really tightly to this commitment to really being present,
Mm-hmm.
especially for those big events in our kids' lives. And she's not going to know if I'm not there,
Mm-hmm.
or if dad's there. It's not going to be this childhood trauma that develops out
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
that. But to me, that was one area where I'm like, no, you know what? That's going to take
Mm-hmm.
priority right now. And again, that doesn't mean that I don't care about my work or that I don't do a good job, but I'm holding that with a little bit more of a closed fist right now. And so I think that's kind of how I think about that.
Gosh, I love that you said that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Were
No,
you
no,
going to say
no.
something else?
I was just, I know that was kind of a two-part question, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to speak to that first part because I never like the word balance either. But it's like,
Yeah.
this is what we use, so I'm doing it for our listeners.
Right,
But
right.
now that you unpacked it, I'm like, oh, I'm going there too. I would say something more as you were talking. I'm like, kind of a rhythm, and even adding that
Yeah.
adjective of a peaceful rhythm. One of
Hmm.
the best questions to start asking is, what's a peaceful rhythm for this season in my
Yeah.
life?
Yeah.
And to your point of prioritizing, where is it that we are prioritizing our focus and our energies? And I'll never forget one time I was sitting and doing a meeting with this some of my colleagues, and I was doing it at work, and it was a self-driven company that I had started. So I have only myself to blame. And that night I had skipped my son's baseball game, and it was the
Mm.
night he hit a home run.
Oh,
Yeah, every mom or every
yeah.
parent listening to this right now, you can see the pain that I felt. And I'm not even kidding
Yeah.
you. I shut down that company, and it already been kind of trying to figure out if I should shut it down. It was starting to become more work than it was worth. And I had
Hmm.
so much effort and energy that was not getting returned in kind. And so that night was so clarifying for me when I was like, I will never miss a game of his again. Like, this is my
Yeah.
one season. This is my priority. And yeah, it was during his time when he was having, it felt like a million baseball games a week, right? You're like, good heavens. One, he won't mind me missing, but I'm like, it's the one that he missed
Right.
his, I'm like, that was almost like a sign from the universe that said, nope, nope.
Yeah.
You want to keep the priority right here. And it's easy to let that slip.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, to your other question too about what got me wanting to get into this work. I think that was the other part of it
Mm-hmm.
was I in my role with educators, I also do a lot of coaching, and
Mm-hmm.
but it looks a little bit different because most of what I'm coaching on, or most of what they want to be coached on, is is what you would call like the technical factors,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And
yeah.
so, well,
Break that down for our
yeah,
audience. What is that? What
yes,
did I used to call that when we worked together?
yeah, and and actually working with you is the first time that I had heard this, and that
Mm-hmm.
is in not opposition to, but I guess the other piece of that would be the human factor.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, and the best way I can describe it is that technical factor being those questions I think that we naturally immediately jump to because
Mm-hmm.
they seem easiest to solve, around like how do I do that? Like, what are the steps to meet this
Mm-hmm.
particular goal? And so if I put it in context of the teachers that I work with, right?
Mm-hmm.
the technical factors that they would want me to answer would
Mm-hmm.
be things like, well, how do I get children to start,
Yeah.
behaving, listening to me? Like, what are the
Yeah.
things that I do? What are the charts that I put on the wall? What are the
Yeah.
things that I say? What are those interventions? Right. So that would be
Right.
some of the educator language. But then the human factor, and I found that it was a lot harder for people to connect with that piece of it. And I didn't even realize that this was the struggle that I was dealing with when
Mm-hmm.
in my work until you gave me some language around that. But that human factor is really, well, again, using this classroom analogy
Mm-hmm.
would be the things like, well, let's talk about some of the stories that you're telling yourselves, the beliefs that you've got around your effectiveness as an educator, around what you're capable of doing, around
Mm-hmm.
the relationship that you're able to have with your students. And so it's, I think that, well, it's that human factor, right? Like, what are those like
Mm-hmm.
human components that really make us who we are, that lead us to be able to do the
Mm-hmm.
things that we do?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you've been doing this work a lot longer than I can, so I'm sure you can articulate that better. But in my mind, that's how it makes the most sense to me.
You said it perfect, Jen. I'm just so impressed because you're right on. We have to start separating it out because we know instinctively something's off.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't know what it is. And so we give the people that we're trying to coach or work with, we give them more of the technical stuff. Well, maybe try this, whatever, 7-step lesson
Mm-hmm.
plan, try
Yeah.
this intervention, try this chart. Certainly that's needed. But there's a whole nother component here, which we have to begin to talk about, which is the human factor. And in the
Right.
work that I do, I try and say that neither one trumps the other. It's just
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, to your point earlier, the technical factor is easier to answer.
Yeah.
The technical factor question is, what should I do? Human factor question is, how is this impacting me?
Mm-hmm.
What's a false belief I'm holding here?
Right. Yeah.
What is it that this either child or colleague or peer is feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Those are human factor questions that are really complementary to the technical and vice versa. But oftentimes we shy away from those or we're just not trained to ask the human factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What made you seek out a coach?
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of twofold, and I was always really impressed with how you navigated helping me to address both of these goals that I had. Because one was really becoming more proficient in the work that I was doing with educators. Because again, I had, done some coaching, but I really felt like, man, with a little bit of help, I could take this to a whole new level. And like I said,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of what I was coaching around were those technical factors.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there just felt like there was something missing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the other piece of it was like, I actually really, the experience that I did have working with educators one on one in that coaching kind of relationship, even though I didn't feel like I had all the tools to be able to do it at that time, felt like, man, I really enjoyed doing that and being able to help other people find the answers that they needed.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really been one that felt like I wanted to be in a position where I was giving someone else all of the answers. I feel
Mm-hmm.
very strongly that most of the time we already have the answers.
Mm-hmm.
There is often just something that is blocking us from being able to figure out what that is, or maybe even with like a little bit of push or a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
guidance, we can get there on our own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to think, well, maybe I could do, because I love doing that in this context so much. I thought I could really enjoy doing that
Mm-hmm.
um, on my own, working with not necessarily with educators, but with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of friends, family members, things like that, who are, especially in seasons of life that I'm in with young kids, trying to balance, and
Mm-hmm.
there comes those air quotes,
Yes.
all those different components of
Mm-hmm.
life, from family
Mm-hmm.
to work, those false beliefs that, especially as women, we hold around, having the expectation that we need to do all of it with, and if we slip up in any one area, then it makes us a bad mom. It makes
Mm-hmm.
us a bad professional. It makes so. I think we are just really, really highly prone to
Mm-hmm.
sitting in those false beliefs, and
Mm-hmm.
I think some of them are societally promoted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're just, because of that, a little bit more prone to fall into that. And so I was even kind of finding myself in conversations with friends and colleagues where I didn't realize that I was doing that coaching, or I was starting
Mm-hmm.
to think and with that sort of coach's mindset, and really enjoying those conversations and helping kind of work through those beliefs with people. And then, of course, knowing a little bit about what you do because of my
Mm-hmm.
husband,
Mm-hmm.
and then just personally being a fan of this podcast and your writing and things like that. I started to think, I bet Heather could really,
Mm-hmm.
really help me here. Like, I think I could really learn a lot from her, and I did. And so that's kind of where that came from.
Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
I love that you mentioned this, and I think this is for a lot of people listening. I want to encourage you. Did you hear her talk about this idea that instinctively she knows people aren't looking for like a formula or an answer to be handed to them? They're
Mhm.
looking to be empowered that they hold the answer within them. Boy, that is the heartbeat of coaching. You captured it. This is what's going to
Mhm.
make you a great coach as you move into the field of coaching more with the human factor. I know you're doing a
Right.
lot with the technical factor now, but I think if I don't want to speak for you, but I think that was one of the epiphanies where you said, I don't really want to keep coaching on the technical factor. I've
Yeah.
got that nailed. I want to start moving in the human factor.
Right.
And so I think as you start looking at that, what that looks like for you, that's what's going to be exciting as that unfolds in front of you. But this idea that people hold the answers within them and they hold their own clarity, they
Mhm.
hold their own confidence, they hold their own courage. But if we're asking them uh, technical factor questions like what should you do, what should you do, what should you do, how do you fix this, these are technical questions we ask, important
Mhm.
questions to be asked at times for sure, but not asking them human factor questions like, well, what's your clarity on this,
Mhm.
what's your confidence level here, what are the beliefs that are impacting your confidence level, where's your courage, how you want to engage your courage, how do you want to
Right.
step forward in it. These are really critical questions to ask the human factor side that helps develop us as humans so that we can actually start feeling this empowerment that we hold our own clarity, our own confidence, and our
Mhm.
own courage. And that was fun to see that you already had that natural ability, Jen. So to be able to see that kind of taken to that next level, I guess I want to ask you some of the false beliefs that kind of came out for you as in our work together.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because I think there's a lot of things that came out that I didn't realize were there. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
that's always kind of the magic of that
Mm-hmm.
coaching relationship. But I think some of it was around, I tend to be someone who's like an all or nothing kind of gal. And so when I get an idea for something, I just want to like jump right in and just
mm-hmm.
just hit the ground running. And then, which is can be really great. The flip side of that though is if something isn't working, then I'm like, why just I need to blow it all up then, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
need to just scrap it. I need to start new.
Yes. Yeah.
And we were just talking about haircuts earlier, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
that whole idea of like, man, I'm really not having a great haircut or a hair day today, or I'm not really liking the way that I'm looking these days. And I guess I just need to chop it all off, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes, or a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
it really comes down to, right, the power of just like getting your hair and getting like a nice little trim or something like that, and it really
Mm-hmm.
refreshes things. And so I think at that time in my life I was really feeling like, man, in a lot of areas kind of dissatisfied with my professional work,
Mm.
and really feeling like, man, like do I just need to start like completely leave this and jump into something new, and so is that all or
Mm-hmm.
nothing sort of mindset. And one thing that so I guess that was the false belief, and
Mm.
there felt like this urgency around it, like
Mm-hmm.
something's not working, I'm not quite sure what it is, um and so I need to figure it out now, and I need to make a huge change right now.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the false beliefs. And then one of the other ones, more related to, well, if I want to do this coaching thing, um, but I can't possibly jump into something new right now. Like that would be irresponsible. I'm too, and
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm not old. I'm not saying I'm old, but I felt like
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, well, I'm in a career, like I can't, it's too late
Mm-hmm.
to change to something else.
Mm.
Um, And so there was a sense of urgency, but also feeling like what do I do then? Because those
Mm,
false beliefs were really working with one another. The
mm-hmm.
sense of like, oh man, I need to do something different, oh, but I can't because it's too late for me. And
Wow.
so there were a few different ones that kind of came up, but I think those were the two main things
Mm-hmm.
for me. And so, yeah, there's a lot of, I think, what we worked through.
Yeah, it's great. That's so many of our conversations are coming back to me now
Yeah.
too. And I remember just asking you one question and I would watch your clarity come out. I remember
Yeah.
even opening the conversation like, is this a technical conversation like about how to be a coach, or is
Mm-hmm.
this a human factor conversation like your own clarity, confidence, courage? And
Yeah.
you knew exactly where you wanted to go with it. And I
Mm-hmm.
never knew, but I think it was so fun to see your clarity emerge. And I think I want to ask, what was the true belief you reached for as you start recognizing almost this urgency, but it's too late? I mean,
Yeah.
that is a horrible place to be. I feel your
Right.
pain with that. I think a lot of us can feel that. We're like, oh my gosh, this feels so competing with one another, but they
Yeah.
feed off each other, don't they?
They really did. Yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
just a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps the thing with those two is it really keeps you in that place too,
Yes. Keeps you
right?
stuck in that anxiety, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so I think one of the false beliefs around the it being too late was, very clearly like I've got time, I
Mm-hmm.
and part of that for me was really recalling some of I've got so many amazing
Mm-hmm.
friends and colleagues in my life that they've had, you being
Mm-hmm.
one of them that have have done a number of amazing things in their life. So it's just that reminder that true belief that like it's not too
Mm-hmm.
late and you've
Mm-hmm.
got time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one around that urgency piece was that it's like you can take your time. Like
Mm.
you don't have to make the change right now.
Yeah.
And I think, because we are both, come from a
Mm-hmm.
background of faith too.
Mm-hmm.
I was really reaching for, and I can't ever quite remember that scripture or the reference, but it's something along the lines of like, man decides his way, but God directs his steps and makes them
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been kind of a verse that I've reached to in a number of different places in life when there's
Mm-hmm.
been a big transition or when I'm searching out something new. And it really is this reminder that like God has come before me and I don't need to worry what's on the other side of this or when I'm going to get to the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's not so much like a jumping over the fence, but it's really like walking a path with him,
Mm-hmm.
um, because he's already gone there
Mm-hmm.
and he's already like blazed the trail for me. And so I don't need to worry about that.
Mm. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, we call those anchors. And I think true beliefs are hard to believe. First of all, they don't feel true, right? Because if they felt true, we would be doing it. Yeah, I love that you brought that up about the faith piece because that's, if your faith is important to you like it is to Jen and I, anchoring our true beliefs in something is so critical
Mm-hmm.
because they don't really feel true. I kind of joke with my clients. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I call them true beliefs because it's kind of like an act of faith, right? Where we're just going, this is going to be true one day. Maybe it doesn't feel
Right.
true today. The false beliefs feel true, but the false beliefs are what are limiting us, keeping us stuck, keeping us back. And we know in our gut when it's false. It's never
Mm,
something for me to call. I would say, do you think that it might be false? You're like, yeah, like I'm sick of this. It feels like this just thing that's been haunting at me. And I go, well, then what would feel true? And that's moving into your clarity, confidence, and courage to identify what you're ready to get rid of. And so in
mm-hmm.
our work together, I could see you saying, yeah, I'm over this. Like, I know this isn't helping me anymore. And I go, yeah, we
Yeah.
outgrow these beliefs. And so we get to start putting them in categories of what is false. And of course, the true ones are always harder to come up with, but recognizing what you need to be true. And I often say what feels too good to be true is often our true
Mm,
belief. But for those of us who our faith is important to us, anchoring it into a verse has been so critical.
right.
For those of us who don't really engage our faith like that, I just always want to encourage them poetry, art, movies, things
Mm-hmm.
that stir the soul. You know, I don't want you to feel anyone to feel boxed in on finding
Right.
their true beliefs, but I do recommend anchoring them in something
Yeah.
because it feels like they kind of like are untethered and floating out there. And it's really hard to practice those true beliefs every day when they feel so untrue. Can you
Right.
speak a little bit to that of just what grew that true belief for you?
Yeah. I mean, I like how you were saying that they don't always feel true in the moment.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things that, you had me do was create my true belief cards. And so
Mm,
I actually did it with a group of people. And so, we went out and we were thinking, and not all of us were, working with a coach or anything like that. But I knew that, this was a group of artists and that I was
mm-hmm,
meeting with regularly. And so a lot of us were holding these different false beliefs around various things. And
mm-hmm,
so, we're searching for an activity to do together. And so that's one of the things we did was create these cards. Um, and I think, particularly to the one about um, their the time aspect of
mm-hmm,
it's not too late and like I've
mm-hmm,
got time was there were days when I had to kind of revisit that where
mm-hmm,
I would have to remind myself of that.
mm-hmm,
And that's why it was really helpful to have that visual
mm-hmm,
reminder as
mm-hmm,
well, something
mm-hmm,
that I could look to, actually
mm-hmm,
physically look to remind myself.
mm-hmm,
um and also having that anchor, I think
mm-hmm.
there's something really powerful about that anchor being something that's outside of ourselves. And at first I kind
Yes.
of thought like, well, that seems nice and all, but I had kind of wondered how necessary is it to have that? And it
Mm,
it came there were times when it was incredibly necessary because
mm,
it didn't always I didn't always feel like I could trust myself
mm-hmm.
because right our false beliefs, like you said, sometimes our false beliefs feel more true than the true belief does.
Sure.
And
Mm-hmm,
so to have something outside of myself that was especially a higher power or a higher
mm-hmm,
authority that
mm-hmm,
um that I look to, it really did, it was really that anchor.
mm-hmm,
But I think the other thing was sharing that with people
mm.
was really critical too.
Yeah.
So not just you, but also, my husband.
Mm-hmm,
I think even that group that we did that true belief activity,
mm-hmm,
someone else that I could go to when I'm like, man, I'm really struggling with believing or this true belief or my false belief
mm-hmm,
feels more true in this
mm-hmm,
moment. Having someone else to remind me
mm-hmm,
of my anchor, but also to remind me of who I am.
mm-hmm,
Because I think sometimes there's plenty of evidence in our lives of where those true beliefs have been true.
mm-hmm,
It's just all the other things kind of overshadow it sometimes. And
mm-hmm,
so having someone to remind us, someone, especially someone who knows us, of what is true can be
mm-hmm.
so crucial in those moments when we just want to fall prey to our false beliefs.
So well said. It's taking me back to where I really crafted all of this. It was when I started moving into, I didn't even know what coaching was. I didn't even know if I was going to do coaching. I just knew I wanted to move out of education and start my own company to
Mm-hmm.
somehow teach people.
Yeah.
And I remember just starting it and I remember thinking, oh my goodness. And I discovered a coach and I ended up getting coaching. And I'm like, I want to become a coach. And then but what are the false beliefs? I don't know what I'm doing. No one's going to hire me. How do I start a
Mm-hmm.
company? I've never started a company. I've been an educator my whole life and worked with nonprofits. I had a very different skill set. These were all the false beliefs that were really keeping me stuck. I had to reach for the true belief that's like, I'm made for more. I get to
Mm-hmm.
live the life that I know I'm created for. And it's got to be anchored into things like, for me, it was Psalms 23. I'm being led and guided by a loving shepherd who gets me,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's these awarenesses that we need, these new beliefs when we are shifting and growing and changing. Nobody comes to me and coaching when everything's going wonderful and hunky dory. They're usually
Right.
coming to me when they're at crossroads, they're feeling vulnerability, they're feeling stuck, or they're going too fast and trying to figure out how to slow down. It's just a myriad of things. And so I think having this awareness for what beliefs are motivating us. that learning how to do that, this is the
Yeah.
sustainable piece that I really long for everybody. If you're interested in coaching, or if you're interested in becoming a coach or getting a coach or anything to do with coaching, I want to say work with someone who's going to go after those core beliefs, because now that is sustainable. So,
Mm.
Jen, fast forward, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years maybe, and your kids are growing, you're empty nest. You've got time to practice this. This is what I'm
Right.
excited about. You've got time to
Yeah.
practice this. You're just doing your career, you're raising your kids, and not everything's going to come together easily right now because we're balancing so much right now.
Yeah.
But you will find that peaceful rhythm throughout this time as you lean into those true beliefs and let things kind of shift and go and grow. And things will get a little bit more clarity and focus for you as you
Mm.
start, the kids start leaving, the career starts advancing in different areas. You'll get more clarity. But more
Right.
importantly, you're learning this new muscle of saying, there's always false beliefs that are to crop up at all
Right.
different points in your life. This never goes away, but now you know what to
Hmm.
do about it when it does come up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was one of the biggest benefits in working with you is it wasn't, and again, it goes back to the benefit of not just addressing the technical factor, because
Hmm.
usually the technical factor, there's a fixed solution for a problem or a finite amount of problems or
Hmm.
issues or struggles. But the human factor, I think one of the strengths of addressing that in tandem with those technical factors is that it really does set us up to be able to find our way the next time something comes up.
Yep.
Because right now I'm in a particular season of life. And so with that
Hmm.
season of life, there comes all these different false beliefs that
Hmm.
I'm trying to navigate my way through. And if I look back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was a lot of different false beliefs that I was
Hmm.
navigating then that are
Hmm.
not relevant to where I am today. And where I am
Hmm.
today, I wouldn't have been able to make heads or tails of it 10, 15
Hmm.
years ago. And so that tells me that, and like you were saying, in another 10,
Hmm.
20 years, it's going to be a different season of life. But because I've got these tools and the language around
Hmm.
how to recognize those false beliefs when they come up and what to do about it, how to address the human factor, not just the technical factor.
Hmm.
I I may have even commented on this when we were working together. It's like, I one of the biggest benefits is that I don't just feel like I've gotten tools to be able to like address these issues now, but I'm going to be able to address this later in life. And that's what I wanted for
Hmm.
my own clients when
Yes.
once I started coaching was I don't want to just help someone, give someone
Hmm.
an answer for a particular problem right now. I really want to set them up to be able to have the tools to self-reflect when something different comes down the pipeline later on.
Exactly. Which is why, I get asked all the time, how'd you break into coaching? How do I become a coach? And I
Mm-hmm.
always say, just go hire your coach. You
Yeah.
want to live it out and experience it. I swear you will learn so much for getting coaching. It's the best training. It's what I did. For two
Mm-hmm.
years, I hired a coach before I decided to become a coach. And I learned so much from that process, because here's the reality: we're never done. And so the
Mm-hmm.
moment we start thinking we are superior in our thinking and our clients are inferior, we have completely derailed what the whole process is. And really, I
Yeah.
believe we move into arrogance. The humility piece is saying, oh, no, I'm right in here with you.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you just said, I'm like, oh, yeah, I fight my own false beliefs. And I think learning not how to be better than other people is just that sometimes I see that with these hierarchies start getting created. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, we're all in this together and we're all learning together. And our goal is to share our collective clarity as a human race of what
Yeah.
have we learned. And I'm right there with you. It doesn't matter if I'm older or less or anything like that. It just is this awareness that I deal with the same thing. I
Right.
got ready to launch a book for the first time, 3 years ago, and I was appalled at the false beliefs that I thought I had conquered, and then the shadow side of success, being in my company, it is very successful. It's 15 years in. Oh my goodness. I didn't even realize this false belief that was starting to creep up on me, which is my world is a performance stage.
Yeah.
The amount of pressure that was putting on me. Yes, I am up in front of people. I'm doing keynotes, I'm doing podcasts, I'm doing writing. But that terrible false belief started creeping in that says, my world's a performance stage. I wait a minute. I don't believe that. My
Mm-hmm.
world is a classroom where I get
Yeah.
to learn and grow. Something started telling me, and I'm sure it's because I had a lot more eyes looking on me and I'm always recovering from the people pleasing and all that other stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
being aware of when these false beliefs come up, and I do remember this in our talk, I'm like, and share it with somebody, share it with your inner
Yeah.
circle, because now you have this intelligent clarity of what it is you're combating, and you're telling them, join me here.
Mm-hmm.
Don't join me over here somewhere where you think that I might be. I want to tell you exactly what I'm dealing with. And even telling my husband, I don't want to fall in this trap that my world is my performance stage, because all
Yeah.
that does is it's going to make me an inauthentic person. And I don't like any of that about me. And I don't want it to tap into my ego. I want to stay humble. I want to stay teachable. I want to stay in that space no matter how successful I get. So
Mm-hmm.
what's my true belief then? The world is my classroom, which means I'm learning right along with my clients. I'm learning right along with that.
Right. Right.
Is Go ahead. Do you have something to add to that?
Oh no, I love that there's so much room for growth and so much strength in that too.
Mhm.
And that just seems like such a much more exciting way to live our
Yes, doesn't it?
lives.
Yeah.
Um
Who wants a performer as a friend? You want a
right.
fellow student, right?
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I love that you developed that true belief for yourself because that I don't know, that gives you a lot more freedom, but it just sounds like there's a lot more joy that is possible
Yeah.
with that kind of a belief too.
Oh, well said. Yeah, you're right on. That's one of the flags I saw that was starting to think. I'm so glad you brought that up. One of the flags that a false belief is starting to, well, a belief is starting to be false,
Mm-hmm.
and is when your joy is getting robbed from you. And to your point earlier, the urgency on yourself,
Yeah.
the time thing, I'm like, yeah, we both know better. But
Uh-huh.
how do you reach for that? Oh my gosh, it's making peace with where the season I am at right now,
Yeah.
but I'm enjoying, I get to prepare for moving into coaching. And I
Mm-hmm.
saw that shift happen with you. I was like, oh, it's coming. You're made for coaching. You're an
Yeah.
amazing coach, and it's happening already in your professional field. Why wouldn't this be a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
transfer over? And it'll happen when it's supposed to. So
Right.
now your true belief gets to be, I'm on a divine timeline. It's not
Mm-hmm.
my timeline. There's a divine influence. It's guiding my life, and I know we both believe that our divine influence is very loving.
Yeah.
It's for us. So why wouldn't I lean into a loving force that is way bigger and smarter than me? Yeah, I'm so going to be doing that. And so the timing of when that moves into and as the clients come, I think that's going to be so exciting for you.
Yeah.
All right, as we wrap up, what do you want to leave our listeners with if they're either considering going to coach or becoming a coach?
Mm-hmm.
What encouragement would you give them?
Yeah, but one of the things that you mentioned is the power of getting or being coached yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that not only does that make you a better coach, but I think in working with other people, I think there's just a lot of I don't know, authority is not the right word, but credibility, that's the right word. Credibility
Mm-hmm.
that gives you because I think about I once worked years ago when we just had one kid and he was
Mm-hmm.
entering into the terrific threes at that time. And I was beside myself. I had no idea what to do. And so, we hired a parenting coach and she was a colleague of mine. But I think about that in the sense of like, it would have been, I don't think I would have been able to trust her. She had, two teenagers of her own. And so she
Mm-hmm.
had the lived experience of
Mm-hmm.
having gone through that same season. And so
Mm-hmm.
in the same sort of a way, I think about the clients that I'll be working with. And I think there is a sense of credibility that gives me knowing that, and the same with you,
Mm-hmm.
you've been coached by other people. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a sense of credibility that gives.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who are looking at, going into coaching or doing that work as a coach. But also that humility piece that you referenced before,
Mm-hmm.
is really important. And that's always been even before we worked together, like I mentioned, something that I would always ask the teachers that I would work with is like, what's working really well for you right now?
Mm,
Because you are doing something right.
mm,
Um,
mhm,
and part of your false belief is probably that you're not. And so I don't want you to lose sight of what's going really well for you and where you're already hitting the mark. And
mm,
so I think that humility piece of recognizing that people have the ability in them
mm,
to shift or to go the direction that they want to be going is
mm,
really critical. And again, that lends itself to the credibility piece. I don't want to work with
mhm,
someone that just
mhm,
it's great if you've got all the answers, but if I feel like I'm not capable of doing this on
mhm,
my own, then the second that you're gone, oh my
mhm,
gosh, I'm going to be grasping for straws.
mhm,
Um, and so those are, I think, the two things for people who are interested in going into that field of coaching.
mm,
And for someone who is, wanting to be coached or for whatever reason, um, I think it's being willing to look at those human factors, being willing
mm,
to look at the things that you feel like might be disconnected to it,
mhm,
to what you're after. Um, and but also trusting, and I think this would go with for someone who's wanting to coach as well, is the power of your intuition is
mm,
I think so important.
mhm,
Whether you are using your intuition to really guide you in what you need right
mhm,
now, or in guiding you and maybe intuition is not the right. I would use the word spirit, because I think
mhm,
that is
mhm,
really where our intuition comes from, is our Holy Spirit. And but
mhm,
um you know either listening to where we need to pay attention in our own lives and using that
mhm,
intuition to guide us in that, or using that intuition to guide us in helping other people to recognize that within themselves.
mm,
So really, really leaning in on that that gift, that power,
mhm,
of that, again, whatever you want to call it, whether it's intuition, your gut, the spirit,
mhm.
whatever it is that you name it.
Yes. Or even in my book, The Voice on the Wind.
Yes.
I love that. I don't think I could say that better myself. That's a great way. I'm just rooting for all our coaches out there, or the people who want to become coaches, or the people who are trying to find coaching. And I think I would also just encourage people interview coaches. Take the
Mm-hmm.
time to interview them and get to know them and see if they align with where you want to go and how you want to spend the next 6 to 9, 12 months, whatever their contract is.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to spend time with them? Because I think you deserve the right to be able to interview and express what you're looking for. What are your
Mm-hmm.
objectives? What are your expectations? What would success look like? You want to make sure you have that really clear conversation at the beginning. So you know what you're hiring, you know what you partner with.
Yeah. Yeah. And everyone, there's obviously different personalities. And
Hmm.
even I work with a lot of folks in my field that, also coach educators, and they do a great job, but they, some of them take a different approach than other people.
Hmm.
And I really liked the approach that you took, and the way that you framed things, and even just the way that you held space for some of that, those answers to kind of come
Hmm.
to your
Hmm.
clients. And that was really what I wanted. And
Mm,
so I think, that is a really valuable piece of advice of like, and
hmm.
just because
Hmm.
you talk to someone and you feel like it's not going to work, that's okay.
Hmm.
That's, no reflection on who they are, or yourself, but you may just need something that's a little bit different.
Love that. Love
Yeah.
that. Thank you, Jen. Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on my website at imadeToCreate.com. And then you can also find me on Instagram. I'm also there at I Am Made to Create. And my podcast too is Made to Create. And so you can find, but you can find all that information on my website.
Yes, yes. I've
Yeah.
loved the podcast. I've loved you also have an email newsletter, don't you have?
I
coming
do,
out?
yeah. And so if anyone wants to get connected to that, again, you can find that on my website.
Website.
It's just my subscribe buttons. You just scroll all the way down at the bottom of the screen and it's right there. And if you want to reach out to me via email, then you can do that at imade to create, or sorry, no, Jen at imade to create.com.
Perfect. And we'll have all that in the show notes for everyone.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's been so great having you here today. And I just, I'm rooting for you and cheering you on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a pleasure, both today and all the work that we've done with each other in the past.
Oh, agreed. Yeah. And both Jen and I are cheering all of you on too, as you navigate all these new seasons of life and don't find your balance, find your peaceful rhythm. Right,
Yes,
Jen?
peaceful rhythm. Much better wording.
All right. Take care, everyone.